23 years, and 22 of those years I was with the trace evidence discipline. But in my current role as the comparative disciplines coordinator, I support APHIS, friction ridge, firearms and tool marks, forensic document examination, trace evidence, and then also our evidence program. I've been fortunate that I've been involved quite a lot in the national community. I've been a member of OSAC for the past 6 years. Prior to OSAC, I was a member of SWGMAT, so I feel like I'm pretty well connected within the national community and also the expectations from the national level. I've also been involved with accreditations, so I've also seen other laboratories and what their processes are, and I look forward to just trying to improve standardization and improving quality. And that's it.
Thanks, Candy. I think it would be helpful just a quick intro from each of the rest of the members since we are adding new folks. So I'm going to start with Elise. Would you just say who you are and what lab you represent and what your area of expertise is? That'd be great. Thanks.
I'm Elise Watts, formerly of the Fort Worth Police Crime Lab, and I am currently the quality manager for NMS Laboratories, the criminalistics section.
Thanks, Elise. Christina, do you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Christina Vachon. You can call me Christy. I am the quality assurance manager at the Bexar County Crime Lab currently. For 15 years, I was a forensic scientist in the trace evidence section.
Thanks, Christy. Callie?
Yeah, hi, I'm Callie. Really short story short, I'm the prosecutor in the group. And so I've been with the Collin County DA's office for 8 years.
Thank you. Aaron?
Morning, y'all. I'm Aaron Reed. I'm the Assistant Crime Laboratory Director at the Bexar County Crime Lab. Prior to that, I was the quality manager for about, I guess, 12 years. And then prior to that, I was a DNA analyst for, I don't know, 10, 9, something along those lines. So, yeah, anyway, that's me.
Thanks, Aaron. Robert, would you introduce yourself, please? Robert's a member of our staff at the commission.
Yeah, I'm Robert Smith. I was a prosecutor in Travis County for several decades, and I'm just working here.
Okay, that doesn't quite say it all, but we'll let it slide. Let it slide. Robert was a felony chief for a while, and so he's been doing this for a long time, and he's been involved in some of the highest profile cases that we've had here in Travis County, including that he did a lot of the work on the Michael Morton case in collaboration with Texas DPS. And so we're really grateful that we have Robert's expertise as well. We already heard from Deborah. Bill, you want to go next?
I'm Bill Hines. I'm the defense attorney. And maybe my biggest claim to fame is I was in the district attorney's office with Robert for some time.
Cool. Yeah, that's great. Emily?
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm the lab director at the Jefferson County Crime Lab in Beaumont. My expertise or my background is cease drugs and then toxicology, but blood alcohol, breath alcohol only.
Thank you. Donna?
Hello, my name is Donna Daly, and I'm the firearms manager at the Houston Forensic Science Center.
And then I think you all know Lee, but Lee, why don't you introduce yourself real quick?
I'm Lee Tomlin. My new last name is Tomlin now. I'm the Associate General Counsel at the Forensic Science Commission, and for the most part, I manage the accreditation and licensing programs.
Okay, and then Rodney, would you introduce yourself, please?
Sure, good morning. Rodney Soward. I've been with the FSC group. It'll be 2 years starting next month, so congratulations to me. Prior to that, I was also a state employee with the Texas Comptroller's Office, and prior to that, I was with the Texas DPS and different duty stations.
And Rodney is our main contact for analysts who are trying to process their license renewals through Top Class. So he is extremely busy right now, and is trying to help people navigate that system at a fast and furious rate. And as I'm sure you all know, forensic scientists are diligent folks, and they definitely are not shy about reaching out. So he's super busy right now. But Rodney is our main go-to for making sure that everybody gets their license renewed and gets it renewed on time. And he does the new license processing as well. So he's got a lot on his plate. Lee, would you scroll down so we can see what we have here? So we have everyone present. I don't think we have any absences, which is great. Lee, do you want to do the instructions for public participation?
Sure. I don't think we have any public participants on, but if we do have some come on, we'll host a public comment period at the end of the agenda where we'll unmute everyone at the same time and allow anyone to speak publicly. And throughout the meeting, if someone chats in the chat box asking to comment, typically we'll let them comment. We try to limit it to 5 minutes. But there's some situations where they'll go over and it makes sense. So if anyone has any questions, let me know.
And then Lee, can you scroll back up so I can read the language on the governor's proclamations, please?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I just want to make sure we say this since we're hosting this call, this meeting via Zoom due to Governor Greg Abbott's March 13th, 2020 proclamation of a state of disaster. And September 7th, 2020, and then he extended it again on October 8th of 2020, proclamation of a state of disaster affecting all counties in Texas due to coronavirus, and the governor's March 16, 2020 suspension of certain provisions of the Texas Open Meetings Act. The October 23rd, 2020 meeting of the Texas Forensic Science Commission will be held by virtual and telephonic conference call as authorized under the Government Code section 551.125. Okay, so hopefully that will be the last time I need to do that, because we are going to elect a chairperson. And it's also helpful to have a vice chair in case the main person who facilitates the meetings can't attend due to a scheduling conflict or something like that. So basically what the chair does, just to give you an idea, is they help the group move through the meeting agenda. And then that person is our main go-to person, by our, I mean commission staff, on questions that arise, especially any questions that might be of an urgent nature from one meeting to the next. So if, typically there aren't a ton of them, but if something comes in that we're not sure of and we can't, our lawyer brains can't quite compute what it is that's being asked or something like that, we would go to Greg and say like, hey, Greg, are we understanding this request from the lab correctly? Are we understanding what it is they're asking for example, in terms of whether this particular item should qualify for continuing education? Do you know what this conference is? Do you know what they're referring to? Do you know what this training is? And that person helps us sort through that process. So those are the main roles of the chair. Lee, did you want to add anything to that, or does that seem accurate?
That's pretty accurate. And we try to be mindful of, we know you all are busy, so we try to take care of the bulk of the work ourselves before we ask the questions typically. And we'll try to consolidate the work for you as best we can. We understand you're busy, so we don't want anyone to not volunteer just because of that piece of it. But yep, that's about it.
Okay, so anyone want to do it? Anyone like to volunteer? We would love to, and then you can, your vice, then we'll elect the vice chair second. Let's see.
I'd do
Silent.
it if nobody wants to do it, but I want to give everybody a chance to jump in if you want to.
Oh, I think you'd be great.
All right, I was going to nominate you.
Emily, would you be interested in doing that?
No, I was going to nominate Aaron.
Yeah.
Okay, so any other nominations?
Please feel free. I'm not trying to steal it. If anybody wants it, you can have it.
Okay, I think what we'll do is hearing no other nominations, all those in favor of Aaron Reed chairing the licensing committee, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, Aaron,
Can we do a motion, Aaron, on that?
I just took the motion. It's fine. I can do it in the absence of a chair.
Okay.
Aaron, can you take a motion on, let's see who, you take over from here on out.
I'll try. I'm going to be really bad at this. I'll be honest, but I'll try to get better.
Okay, we can help
Are
you.
there? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And then just the idea is that we just need somebody who can serve as your backup.
Right.
So
Is there anybody that wants to volunteer or anybody want to nominate someone for the position of vice chair?
Yeah, I think Emily would be great.
I second that. I don't think I can, but I agree.
Her video just disappeared. I wonder if it's a coincidence.
Yeah, mine's going in and out too. I don't know why.
Emily, can you hear us?
She's muted too, so I don't.
Let me see.
There she is again. She just joined. Can you hear us, Emily? Emily?
Let's hurry up and vote her in before she can hear us.
I was going to say, let's have a
Well,
vote.
It's usually the way it happens. When you're not here, you get nominated for panels and stuff like that.
I don't know what's going on. Maybe her internet is not wanting to cooperate. Let me see if I can let me look at or is there a way, Lee, for you to look at the participants and unmute her, or?
Yeah, there is. I can request to unmute her. But it doesn't look like she's muted right now.
Emily?
She said her connection crashed.
I see her. There you go. Emily, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Interesting. I had the same thing happen a minute ago.
So mine did too. Mine kicked me out and I got back in.
We could ask her in the chat if she wants to do it. How about that?
Let me see. You have been nominated.
Are you gonna write it?
I can do it.
There we go.
There. Is that?
Oh, well, I see her moving now. Is she back?
Yeah, me
Emily?
too.
Uh-oh. I'm gonna send this to everyone. What is going on with Zoom right now?
I don't know. My video keeps going in and out too. I have the best internet here at home usually.
Oh, Emily. That is for you.
We can still take a vote without her since we got a quorum.
Yeah, if you guys want to vote.
Does anybody want to make a motion for Emily being vice chair?
I move for Emily to be vice chair.
Okay, Donna, do we have a second?
Second.
I didn't hear who the second was, but I'm assuming that's Bill.
All right.
Okay.
You'll just say all in favor,
yeah,
and then
all
everybody.
in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Say nay.
Okay,
Motion carries.
so we have our chair and vice chair. That's
She can
great.
always resign if she chooses.
Yeah, we can change it. We can change it. That's true.
It looks like, Emily, can you hear us? No. There she is again. Emily? It says
Her audio is connecting. Well, we can let her know she's been nominated
Emily,
or elected now.
I feel like I see her right there.
Okay, well,
All
you
right.
just want to go ahead and move
I don't know
on
if
to,
you can hear us, but you've been elected vice chair of the licensing advisory.
Can you shake your head yes if you agree? Give
blink
us a signal.
twice.
Blink twice if you're still alive.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully her audio will be back up here in a second. Okay. So moving along, Erin, do you want to, what we would do here is just ask if everyone's had an opportunity to review the minutes.
Right.
And if there are any edits, if not, ask for a motion to adopt the minutes.
Okay, I'm going to do exactly what Lynn just said. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes?
Yes.
Do you have any proposed edits or changes? If not, can we get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Elise, was that you?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second?
This is Donna. I'll second.
Okay. We got a motion and a second to approve the minutes from last meeting. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Okay, minutes are adopted.
Okay. So next is our administrative update. Lee, do you want to handle that one?
I think Rodney's going to give us the update on licensees, so I'm going to give him the. Are you going to show the PowerPoint, Rodney? Do you need the screen?
Can you share it for me? Because I always seem to have trouble getting
Okay.
it to work right. And I'll just kind of put it up on my side too.
Okay, let me pull it up.
If you can advance it as we move forward, that'd be great.
I sure will.
Okay.
I don't have it up in PowerPoint because it takes forever to load that, but I got it up on my board book. All right, can y'all see it now?
Yes.
Cool. Moving forward, keep in mind these numbers were created and generated as of the 13th of October. So yes, there has been changes, and I'll point out some of the significant ones as we get to them. But again, as of the 13th, we had 1,348 current licensees across the whole board. 917 of those were regular licensees, broken down as displayed on page 2 and 3. And any questions about those? If not, moving on to page 4 for the renewing progress. Again, as of the 13th, we have renewed 176 regular licenses for the next 2-year term. We expect 509 that are eligible to renew for the next term. Most of these are going to come due in December, so we're expecting a really couple of busy months toward the end of this year. To expand, I took the liberty of giving you guys an updated verbal update on the numbers. As of the end of business yesterday, we've renewed 204 regular licenses for the next term. And we expect the numbers for the eligible regular licenses to be 472. So we're making progress.
That's great.
The numbers for the 472 is we're still looking at 32 for October, 142 for November, and 298 remains the same for December.
So if you, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Rodney, but for the LAC members looking at this, December is going to be a really rough month for our staff.
I totally agree. Yes, ma'am.
Which is unfortunate because it's also not usually the most productive month generally for folks in terms of just the holiday interruption and so forth. But we are 100% committed to giving Rodney the support he needs to be able to process all of these without, for lack of a better way to say it, completely losing his mind between now and the end of and the new year. So it's a lot of work. And I only mention that because if there are questions that pop up in that time frame, we will try to not bother you with those. But if you could just keep your eyes on your emails just in case, that would be helpful. And then the other thing is that for those of you who are in labs where you have a management role, which is pretty much everybody here, it is really helpful if people don't wait till the night before to start processing their license, because that really puts our staff in a jam. They are endeavoring to monitor, like, okay, John, your license is about to expire. Your license is about to expire. They get, 3 separate warnings from the system. And then we do individual outreach. Like, do you really mean for this to expire, Joe? And so we're doing that because we feel like the work entailed in attending to an expired license is it's greater than catching them beforehand and getting them done. But as we get into these higher numbers, it's going to be harder and harder to do individual hand holding for folks who are getting ready to renew. So one of the things that we feel like, and I'd like to get your feelings on this, is that there comes a point at which we feel like the fastest way to get somebody to act is to copy their manager on the email. And I wonder if you have any objections to that. But sometimes it's the only way to be like, hey, John, do you really mean to be letting this go this far? So what do you all think about that?
I agree with you completely.
I have no
I only say
objection to that. I just had a question, and I don't want to add more work to you guys, but is there a way that, like, we could get a list to see who has and who has not? Because I've been hammering my staff to make sure that they get their licenses done. But a lot of them are supposed to have already done it.
We could make a list of those who have submitted an app. We have a ton in the queue, like 70 or something in the queue. So breaking down who submitted what and what they're missing is difficult, and it'll take us more time to do that. But we could tell you who submitted them.
I can offer a little bit of an explanation or assistance where they can individually check if they submitted one or not. If everybody that needs to renew, if they'll simply go to their licensing profile and look at the application status, if they've successfully submitted it and we've received it, they'll see that the status has changed to in review.
Yeah.
And that's pretty fast and easy. If it doesn't show that, then either they didn't submit it, it's still pending, they just didn't launch it and submit it to us, or it's in transitioning to get to us. That's pretty fast and easy they can do individually.
What I did in our lab is I downloaded the entire Excel spreadsheet from the website and then filtered for our lab, and I sent it to each of the individual managers of each of the sections and said, here are your people, here are their expiration dates. And each of the managers is then kind of taking ownership of their folks and what they need to do.
That's a good idea. We started, we actually keep a log as well. We didn't download, but we keep a log of all of our people and keep track of their continuing education credits, keep track of their whether or not they've submitted everything. So we're doing kind of the same idea. It seems to be helpful, but I think a lot of this falls on someone to actually step in and for their individual lab. So I think
Is she cut out for y'all?
Yes.
Yes.
Chris?
I agree. I think that contact.
You cut out for a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with this thing. Yeah, I was saying I agree completely with Lynn. I think the issue is needing to have someone kind of holding people accountable. Maybe sometimes, we all get a little busy.
Yeah.
So if we can, I think Lynn has a great idea. I think adding the supervisor or lab director, whoever's in charge, to at least the notification, I think you have more of a chance of getting something done. I think that's a great idea.
The other thing that we're finding is that sometimes the person has left the laboratory and we just don't have that update. So it's actually helpful to say to the lab, like, hey, John Doe hasn't renewed. And they're like, oh, he quit 2 months ago or whatever. And then we can update that person's status.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons we want to update the status is so that the license shows as inactive on the website too, so that people understand that person's no longer employed at your laboratory. There may be, maybe in the vast majority of cases, it doesn't really matter, but in some cases you may want to make that fact clear to the world too, it depends.
We have several people who have left. How do we notify you? Just an email?
Yeah, email is fine.
Yeah,
The licensing box.
because then at least when they pop up, we won't worry about those folks.
We appreciate those notices, and some labs have a policy where they'll send us a list twice a year or quarterly or something like that.
Okay, we can do that.
Thank you.
And I could coordinate the efforts at DPS to help you guys out too.
That'd be awesome. You know who does that already? And she's so diligent about Alice does it already.
Okay.
She sends
then
us
I'll work with
updates.
Alice.
Yeah. And it's really helpful.
So the other thing I wanted to ask you all as just a technical question is that Board Book It. Is it working for everybody? Are you able to access it? Are you getting the notice that says, hey, the thing's ready, you can see everything okay? I hope.
Yeah, I can access it. It is getting caught in my spam filter. So I actively check my spam filter every day. And so then I have to release it from quarantine, the notifications. But
I would get your IT person to remove it, put it on the white list.
good luck.
Can you
yeah.
whitelist it yourself on there? Sometimes you can.
I've tried.
I don't know what kind of program you got.
Yeah.
If you ever have problems with Board Book It, please let us know.
Yeah, just let me know.
And then the other thing is, technology-wise, if we keep having this issue of folks freezing, one way to alleviate that is to take video off because it reduces bandwidth. So we'll just monitor that as we go, as we continue on this morning. All right, anything else, Lee, in that agenda? Oh, wait, did we cut Rodney off mid-presentation? I feel like I interrupted, I'm sorry.
Rodney, did you have anything else?
There's just a few other numbers if you wanted to talk about them, like the provisional, the blanket license numbers, technical reviews.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just go through them. So
Yeah, I think those are not the. Oh, you want to go through them?
It depends on what it depends.
The
on
blanket
what-
numbers are completely going to change anyway because they're no longer blanket licenses.
I think the focus right now is the regular, so we've already covered that. Unless you want to include the
Let
others.
me see if I can pull it up again if you guys want to see it.
Does anybody have questions for Rodney about the renewal process or feedback you're hearing from people? I know it can be, sometimes Top Class does not cooperate, but we're trying really hard to help people resolve any technical issues they have.
I finally got my email this morning that said that my license was 60 days out, but it's been like 2 or 3 weeks. So
Yeah. And you're waiting for your license to be renewed, Donna? Is it?
I haven't fully submitted it yet. I'm still
okay.
at quality for their memo, but
I'm glad you got the notice. I actually, you all can tell your employees I tailored that notice a little bit better because we got a million emails this morning about people concerned that they hadn't submitted because that's what the notice says. It says be aware your license is expiring, get in
Right.
and submit your stuff when they've already done it. And so I had to tweak the language. I didn't realize that the system would trigger those notices if they've already submitted one. So I just adjusted the notice and made it applicable to everybody, whether they submitted it or not. But it's nice to know they're triggered in the right notification and all that, because we were worried that it was even triggering a notification to a lot of
Yeah,
people for a while.
Yeah, it was not for a long time. So
Yeah.
Okay. Lee, do you want to go back to the main agenda then so we can keep going?
Yeah. I tried to, my screen share just kicked off too. And I was trying to share that spreadsheet again and it wouldn't let me. Let's see if it'll let me do the agenda though. All right, I think it let me.
All right. So on number 6, it says review any stats course evaluation requests and discuss available stats course options. Now on the first one, do we have any stats course evaluation requests, Lee, to review?
We do not. We've had a couple in between last meeting and now that I've worked with licensing committee members to approve. Sometimes we do those along the way because we don't want to make people wait till the next quarterly meeting to get their approval and process their license application. So we don't have any outstanding right now to look at. We did have a question come in about whether or not a high school level, like an AP level, college level credit course would count towards this. And when you read the language in our administrative rules, we say college level or equivalent. And so if it's on someone's transcript and the college is giving them credit for it, my answer to them would be yes, that does count as a stats course, assuming it has all the components on that statistics course qualification doc, and we can just evaluate those on a case-by-case basis. Does anyone disagree with that way of approaching that? It's a high school level course that counts as college, and
As long as they get credit for it, I think
Yeah.
that's the main thing. I think the question that had come up that we looked at was that the person had taken it, but then never actually took the test to get the credit in college. And
Yeah.
so we didn't. My recommendation was not to accept that.
yeah, we denied that one.
Yeah, it
No
definitely
credit.
would not count. But if the college, if the higher education institution recognizes it, I think it qualifies as a stats baseline course would qualify. Same thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Then did you want to talk about the NIST course?
yeah, so I don't know if y'all are familiar with CSAFE, but it's a consortium of universities that has major federal grant money to work on various projects in statistics. So I can actually bring up their website here if you want to see what I mean. Lee, can you make it so that I can share my screen?
Yep.
Okay.
Are you able to do it? Do I need to give you permission or
You
something?
have to give me permission, it says.
All right, that should be done.
Okay, it is. All right, so here's CSAFE. I wonder if some of you have not already seen their work. But they have all sorts of stuff that they do. Their mission is very much both research focused and they have these databases that they're working on that like one of their big areas is firearms. I imagine, Donna, you've probably heard about these data sets that they've collected. So they have glass and they have bloodstain patterns, actually. They have handwriting, they have footwear, and then they've got a bunch of work they've done on firearms. So they are well funded by the federal government, and you can see the universities that are in the consortium down here at the bottom. So they have created a statistics course for the purpose of sort of addressing all of the different areas of statistics that are applicable to practicing forensic analysts. They're piloting this course right now, and they're offering it for free to people who are currently employed in Texas at a forensic laboratory. And so Peter and Elise, I don't know if you guys have sent that email out yet. You did. Okay. So anyone who wants to take that can take it. And it's online, it's asynchronous, which is not even a word I knew about until my kids started doing Zoom school, but it basically means that you can like watch it whenever you want. And there is an exam, but it's taught by faculty, primarily by Iowa State, but not only Iowa State. And what they're trying to do is make it accessible and useful for forensic scientists. So the call has gone out for folks who want to take that. Free is a really good price. It's not going to remain free forever, but because they're grant funded by NIST, they're able to offer that right now. So until the end of the year, until the end in December, whenever it is that they offer the last final exam, folks can go on there and take it. I believe there are 9 modules and it's all video. So that's really good. I don't know, what's the status of the course that, I know it's not NMS, but the foundation that's connected with the university. Do we know what's going on with that, Elise? Because that's the other main option.
As far as I know, that there are people enrolled in there. I don't know what the status is currently, but I can find that out before the end of the meeting.
Because I don't think, Lee, we have the link to sign up to that course, or am I misremembering?
No, we don't yet. I'm sure COVID delayed things.
Right. So the last update we heard from Barry Logan was that they would let us know when it was ready for people to sign up, and that it was going to be similar and that people could take it remotely. But that course is, I feel like, quite nicely targeted to those folks who are in toxicology. I mean, not only to them, anybody could take it and benefit from it, but I think just due to NMS's history, it seems like that might be of particular interest to people who are in toxes, drugs, blood alcohol, stuff like that. Not to say that CSAFE isn't, but they're both covering the same ground. The other option that a lot of people took advantage of was Patrick Buccini's course at Sam Houston that was offered over the summer. The issue with Sam Houston is that they don't offer that course for free. We paid the tuition for everybody who wanted to take that course. And a number of folks took advantage of it. And I think the feedback we got was really positive. So these are all the people who've sort of jumped in to try to help fill the gap with Dr. Spiegelman's passing. And also I think for CSAFE, the Congress pushed them pretty hard on the question of, we will renew your funding. However, you've got to get out there and actually offer things of use to forensic practitioners more than you have been. And this is one of the initiatives that they have to try to meet that goal. So Donna, you must be familiar with the CSAFE folks, right?
Yeah, I'm not as much as one of my staff members, but she's been working really, really closely with them on developing. We provided samples to them and they provided us data for a research project. So yeah, one of my staff is working really closely with them.
Okay, so anyway, those are our options. And I feel like these are much better options than we've ever had before. So So that's.
And
fair.
I've got a question on the CSAFE that maybe you have the answer to and maybe not. I was looking through the syllabus earlier today, and it said that it's got quizzes, but they're not really going to be graded. They're more just for practice, and there is a test. Do we know if the class is only going to be graded as a pass fail, or is it going to be given like an actual letter? And the reason why I ask is we have a career path inside the laboratory that to promote, you have to earn CEUs or college credit, B high or higher. And I'd like to be able to apply this class to those analysts that want to take it, but we need a grade because that's what the requirements state. And I just didn't know if that was something that you might know.
I think, Aaron, that it's pass fail. I am writing to the lead faculty member right now. I bet we'll get an answer before the end of our meeting.
Okay.
But I'm almost positive that it's pass fail. And the other thing is that we want to let people know that they can take it even if they don't need to. So if they just want to, whether it be for some promotion, like you say, Aaron, or for they want to get their continuing forensic education knocked out that way. I mean, it's obviously all relevant, and it's more challenging in a sense than other CE requirements because it is not something that can be audited. If you're going to do it, you got to do it and take the exam. But I do think it's pass fail, and I will confirm for you right now.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Okay, so moving along, Lee, on the agenda.
Is it? I think it's not showing anymore for some reason. Is it now?
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
All right. So discuss and evaluate CFE. We don't have any outstanding CFE requests, and that's another item that we kind of evaluate on an ongoing basis just so that we can continue the process for license renewals and all of that. And if I have questions that come up, I usually pick one of you in that area of expertise and get you to help me confirm whether it should count or not for licensing. We do have a rulemaking here, though. We had something come up where if you look just at the rules on their face, someone who's upgrading their license at the renewal period is not necessarily required to do CFE if you just read the rules the way they're written right now. And so here we're just kind of cleaning that up to make sure that it's clear that if they were licensed the 2 years prior, they have to do CFE as well, even though they're just upgrading their license to a new license category. And so that's what this new rule says, and it's literally just one line here. I don't know if you guys have this pulled up, but it's one line here at the third prong of this particular continuing forensic education rule. Does anybody have any questions about that or why we had to add that language? It's pretty clear.
Are you going to need a vote on that, Lee?
Yeah, we on these rule makings, we typically will do a motion and vote. And what we do is we recommend to the full commission that this is what the licensing board thinks should be the rule and that we've looked at it together. So it's a recommendation to the full commission that we adopt each of these rules. Can we get a?
I'm sorry, before we vote, is this one, which one is this in the board booklet?
This is under the CFE rule item.
Okay.
If you all would rather me pull up that rather than the agenda, I can do that. I just can't show two things at once.
I think the only change is on item 3 on that. It just says by the expiration of each 2-year license cycle. Is that the change?
Yeah, we're just adding the language. If you're licensed for 2 years, you got to do CFE. So.
Do we need to go over that anymore? Does anybody have any further discussion of that? Can I get a motion to, I guess,
It's a motion to adopt the rule as it's drafted by staff.
Okay.
Somebody has, Elise,
Okay. Any, can I get a second?
Second.
Bill,
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passed.
One thing, Erin, that we can do to help, which we do with Dr. Barnard since we've moved to virtual meetings, is that we can do proposed language for motions and votes for each item that we anticipate will require a vote. And that helps move the meeting along a little bit better. So we will probably start doing that for the next meeting. Sometimes they have to be adjusted because an edit will be proposed or whatever, but at least it gives you a framework for motions and voting.
Okay.
Okay. Next, Lee.
next item, I think that's it on CFE. Did anybody else have anything else there they wanted to discuss? The next item here is any specific coursework or minimum education transcript reviews. We do those ongoing as well as they come in. We don't have any outstanding right now that's before the board. We do have a rulemaking here though, and this was an issue that came up with a licensed candidate that basically took a leave of absence. And she was licensed prior to the elevated education requirements taking effect. And she's missing a course, obviously. And her question was whether she had to take a college level course, even though she was licensed under the old requirements. And if you look at the rules, she would have to comply with the new requirements. She would have to get that chemistry course that she's missing. And we wrote those rules so that we could kind of grandfather everybody in at once. And I don't think we want to discourage people taking a leave of absence or otherwise for whatever reason. It may be family or otherwise. And Erin and I talked about maybe putting a time limit on it, but if we do that too, I'm not sure that that would be the best approach policy-wise, just because of all the different scenarios in which someone might take a leave of absence more than a year, or what do you guys think on that? Right now, this is written that it's just an indefinite grace period. If you were licensed under the old requirements and you apply again later, you reinstate it after not being licensed or employed at an accredited lab for a while, that you only have to comply with the requirements under which you were initially licensed. You do have to complete updated CFE from the time that you were licensed initially all the way through up until you get licensed again. So they have to demonstrate that they took that mandatory legal and PR course. They have to complete the same discipline-specific hours in their field, just as any other licensee would. And they have to demonstrate that to us before they get reinstated. But they will not have to comply with those elevated coursework requirements the way I have this written here.
So one of the there are a couple of different factors here. One being that, we don't know what's going to happen with budgets. And we also, people are under lots of different pressures right now at home about, if you have a family situation, for example, where somebody's got to step back from the working role for a little while to cover at home, we don't know how long it's going to last, and we don't want to penalize people who are having to make these impossible choices. And you know what I'm saying? Like, we're trying to be conscious of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think my question would be, is this assuming that they're stepping away in good standing, or is there like a different mechanism that they would have to like reinstate their license if they stepped away not in good standing?
I have the same question. Does it matter if it's like an administrative, like they had to leave for some reason versus a personal needing to take? Does that factor? I had the same question.
So if there's a whole nother track,
A whole separate inquiry, yeah.
Don't leave of their, let's say they leave under a professional misconduct finding or some other violation or alleged violation of the Code of Professional Responsibility. There's a separate track for handling those cases, there are separate rules for all of that.
So this language doesn't even apply to them, and we don't need to clarify the language for that.
It does apply to them in the sense that they wouldn't need to get the extra coursework if they applied. But when we consider each of these applicants individually, they have to pass disclosing if they've committed professional misconduct. Typically, if they have in Texas, we would already know about it. We would have an investigation that was ongoing or a disclosure by the lab at the least. And so we would have to make that evaluation ourselves and go through the whole process of which we have administrative rules for either denying or revoking a license. And there's a long procedure for that because obviously we're denying somebody the right to work there. But it's just a separate inquiry. It's part of their application, and these rules do apply to them, but so do the other considerations that we have when they apply. Does that make sense?
If someone were to step away from a lab because they resign, and they're resigning under a finding that the laboratory itself makes around professional misconduct in particular, we will have all that. We will know all of that, unless it's a lab out of state. But in that case, these rules wouldn't apply anyway, because they wouldn't have been licensed before. We have lots of different ways to discipline folks if they have committed professional misconduct. And honestly, the vast majority of those cases come to us because the lab brings it to our attention. It's not usually via other ways. So we can say, you know, we're gonna probate your license, or we're gonna, you know, you're gonna not be licensed for a certain amount of time and you have to do all these things to get back in good standing. I mean, there's a whole list of stuff we can do. Hopefully that makes sense. And oddly, I'm not sure what's going on, if there's something in the water or what, but this quarter's agenda has more than the average number of things like that just keep popping up. Not at any one lab, but sort of across the board. I'm not quite sure what's going on, but we're seeing more of those determinations by laboratories in this quarter than we typically do over an entire year. I'm not sure what's going on, but that's what we got. Okay.
So we'll just take a, if there's no further discussion, we'll take a motion and vote on the indefinite grace period for licensees with a gap in their employment.
Does anybody have an issue with the indefinite grace period? Everybody okay with that? Okay, can I get a motion on this rule, whether to adopt this new rule?
I'll motion to adopt the rule.
Okay, Emily, can I get a second?
I'll second. This is Elise.
Okay. No further discussion. Can I get a all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay.
All right.
Moving along. On the next item, number 9, under this item, we will evaluate, and at our next meeting, we may have more applications here, but right now we only have one here. But I think we should talk first about the rulemaking here, because this issue kind of came up since our last meeting. We had a laboratory apply for what was essentially our blanket license that offered the option for formerly an out-of-state laboratory to get a blanket license and license their analysts under that provision for offering services to counties that wouldn't otherwise have access to quick forensic analysis, for example. But now we don't need that option anymore because we have the de minimis casework license that applies to in-state and out-of-state laboratories. And the reason we had that rule initially was to ensure that we're not blocking anyone from getting those out-of-state services. But now that we have this new program, I think that we should have removed this provision when we did the de minimis change, but the language was left there. And so now we have a lab who really should be getting their full licenses, these forensic analysts, but they have this option under the rules right now where they can get a license if they're offering services that are limited in small counties. And I don't think that they should qualify or that it should be an option anymore. Lynn, did you want to add more to the?
No, we just had that language in there originally to cover the blanket license, and we didn't remove it, and we should have. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Everything else is covered in the de minimis rule. So I as newly drafted. So I think it's just one of these situations where it's a holdover from a prior rule, which was something that we drafted, talking in particular with Rob Middleberg from NMS back at the time, where we realized that we weren't going to run into a time crunch with our out-of-state outsourcing labs, but that's since been fixed. So we just need to adjust the language accordingly.
Yep. So we'll just need a motion to adopt that rule as we've drafted it. Does anybody have questions about why we're getting rid of that, or?
Okay. If there's no discussion, can I get a motion to adopt?
I'll make that motion. This is Elise.
Okay. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor of adopting this rule?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, rule's adopted.
Okay, the next thing we need to do here is evaluate the application for this, but since the rule, does the evaluation become moot at this point, Lynn? Since
No, because the rules.
the rule hasn't taken effect yet, so I think we need to look at the app and make a determination on whether they qualify. Can everyone pull up that application? It's the second document there under the de minimis applications and rules.
Can you switch to board booklet on your screen?
Page 26 in the PDF.
Let's see. Where am I? All right, I got it up, I think. And so at first, this lab was trying to demonstrate to us that they qualify under the de minimis laboratory because they're offering a unique forensic analysis. But when Lynn and I looked at this, we determined that what they're doing, and we checked with Bruce and some other people, that what they're doing is not necessarily forensic analysis. What they're claiming is the unique forensic analysis that they're offering is this MBAC, which is, from what I understand, and Aaron, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's a way to collect DNA evidence off of a piece of evidence. It's not the forensic analysis in a traditional sense that we would consider, a service to any of our counties anyway.
It's a different, it's a different means of collection. Different means of extracting the biological evidence from the substrate, right, Aaron? Is that accurate?
It's just, it supposedly gathers more material than a standard collection. And it may be useful in low template samples, but it's not an analysis in itself.
So I don't think that they qualify, at least under this first prong, where a Texas customer might request some type of analysis not widely available. And I don't know that it's not available in Texas either. I mean, the MBAC, I've heard of it before. I don't know any other lab that does it offhand, but I think since it's not a forensic analysis, this one's immediately not applicable.
Right. Like, there's nothing that technically would prevent them from providing that service, right? If it's just collection. So
my concern with this was that if they were going to get a license for using this collection, there's nothing in the license that would specify that it was only for the use of this device. So then
There's not,
therefore they
yeah.
could market themselves as licensed and apply it
Right.
across the board.
So the other interesting thing, like if we contrast this with another application that we did grant, another situation, the other situation was the collection of fecal specimens in TDC settings for DNA analysis, because apparently there's a pretty rampant practice of inmates throwing fecal matter at guards. And there are certain repeat offenders of this practice. And so when we looked at that application, there is literally no one else in this state, none of the labs that were accredited, none of the publicly funded labs at all. Like, people just typically don't do that DNA analysis.
Mhm.
And so that was different because we vetted that one pretty extensively. And this, I don't think is that.
Yeah, that's actually the only one we've ever granted under this first prong.
I guess my question would be, do we need to look more into the, if you said you vetted the fecal matter, I mean, is there something special in the processing or whatever of that not most labs can do that?
We surveyed every lab and no one told us they had the service available in Texas when we granted that one.
I mean, I don't know why, but it's just not.
Yeah.
It's like I could probably venture, I guess, that why folks don't do that. But I remember DPS didn't do it. They did at one point, but they stopped. And I'm not sure the rationale for that. But again, you know, this is not DNA analysis anyway. It's
Right.
something else. It's an extraction form. The other thing, frankly, is that I'm not sure that this is the only example of casework that this lab has done in Texas. Because I know
they have other. I know.
they have appeared in other court cases, but I'm not sure if those appearances involve the expert examination or test on physical evidence that was sent to their facility, or if it was just testimony criticizing the forensic analysis performed at an accredited lab in Texas. So defense type critique of analysis performed here without any evidence going anywhere, if that makes sense. So yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so it says that they have this collection device and then they have a turnaround time of 30 days. So apparently they're doing some kind of analysis. But if it's DNA, then I mean, we do have a few labs that will do that in the state of Texas. So it's a disconnect for me.
So I think they do the rest of the analytical work at their facility, but the MVAC is the component of it that they're citing as unique.
Under this first, yeah. The turnaround time would apply to this second prong here that we just got rid of.
But the idea that they're the only ones with the 30-day turnaround time is just hooey. Now, DPS doesn't have a 30-day turnaround time on DNA cases. We all know that. But there are other labs that do. I know there are. I want to say Bayer could do it in 30 days, depending on the number of samples. HFSC could do it in 30 days, depending on the number of samples, you know? And others. I mean, I don't know what NMS's turnaround time is right now. I don't know what, trying to think, UNT, I don't know. But I do think that DPS is pretty much the only one where a 30-day turnaround is really not possible right now. And please correct me if I'm wrong, folks who know.
But is that unique?
Where is Williamson County in Texas? Does anybody know?
Georgetown, just north of
Okay.
Austin.
North of
So
Austin?
I am on the MVAC website right now, and they have implemented MVAC in their lab.
They have a lab.
I don't really know.
Probably the sheriff's office or something.
Okay.
That's what I'm
yeah.
saying. It's probably their crime scene team because
Probably
they don't
crime
have a
scene.
laboratory.
Yeah, it's got to be crime scene.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not real specific on this, but yes, they have.
Which
implemented-
just tells us more that it's an investigative tool rather than an
Right.
analysis, I
Yeah.
think.
To me,
Yes,
it'd be
it's-
akin to somebody saying that we use this special type of swab to
Yeah.
swab the items, and it has a better recovery rate than a regular
Yeah.
cotton swab. That's not an analysis.
So I think what basically we're saying is that nothing prevents this pure gold forensics from using MVAC. If somebody in Texas wanted to send a sample and they collect it and send the collection back to Texas or to an accredited licensed lab, accredited lab, that's fine. But we're not going to let them do the DNA analysis under this blanket license.
This is not the blanket that we're switching to. This is the holdover language. That's part of the
Right.
problem. And this
Right.
is actually how we realized that that holdover language was still there. So I don't think there's any question on the MVAC. There wasn't any from the beginning. When I talked to Badoli about it, he said the exact same thing that Aaron just said. I think almost to a T about what the analogy is to, you got the state-of-the-art swab or whatever. So that is not, I think that part I'm very confident in. The second piece about turnaround times and the fact that there was an urgent rush in Wise County. Well, there's always an urgent.
Yeah.
And there is no laboratory that I know of, and Sandy, correct me if I'm wrong, but up to and including DPS, where if the urgency is expressed appropriately through the laboratory's chain of command and policies and procedures and evidence acceptance framework, that could not get done.
Right.
Am I wrong? Or because I feel like you all have ways in a true utmost importance case, which, let's face it, everybody's case is of the utmost importance to them. There are always ways to expedite the work. And we proceed with great caution when work is asked to be expedited, because we know that increases potential risk, anytime people have the pressure of time on. So for those of you who run crime labs and who know about evidence acceptance policies, am I wrong in thinking that a 30-day turnaround is something that is not particularly unique?
Lynn, are we speaking specifically to DNA or are we talking about cross disciplines?
DNA.
For tox, just DNA. Okay.
You're not wrong, at least from my
You're not wrong.
perspective. That's not our standard. We don't have a standard 30-day turn time, but on a case-by-case basis for an absolute rush, of course, it can be taken out of order and jump the backlog and jump to the front of the line. So, no. And there's no additional fee for it. It's just that it has to be accepted by us that, yeah, we'll jump it.
And we're not saying you can't do this work. We're just saying that if you want to do this work, you've got to get licensed like everybody else.
Yeah.
If you really only have one-off cases here or there are, we have a licensing rubric for that.
The temporary license. There's other options.
Yeah, there are options, but I don't think this particular option is applicable.
Yeah. And I think just the last part of their form here, they try to demonstrate specific case examples, because I went back to them and said, well, you got to show us how you're offering these services to counties. And so they give us a case example, but you know, Lynn's right. I just don't think this meets it. I think that they need to get a license. That would be the most cost effective, best thing for them to do. Because if they do the temporary, they're paying $100 a pop every case they get.
I truly don't know how they are any differently situated than NMS or Bodie or any other DNA laboratory that is physically outside of Texas but does Texas casework. If they are taking evidentiary samples. Now, if all they were doing in Texas was, say, reviewing a report and a case folder and discovery that, say, Bexar County issued, and providing an opinion as to whether it was done properly or whether there were other things to take into account, I think they could testify without a license, but not if they're taking evidence, physically taking it into their custody and doing things with it.
Yep.
And
And really,
can I ask, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Aaron. I'm sorry.
Just to understand the logistics of this, does the staff have the ability to reject the application, or does the recommendation go to the board?
You all have the ability to reject. You all have the authority.
The licensing advisory committee has the ability?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you want to reject it, we'll need a motion. And I just wanted to point out that the practical difference here is all it is the test. They got to take the test, and they don't want to take the test because they have to get fully licensed, whether they're under the de minimis program or not, because they're doing interpretive analysis. They're forensic analysts.
We're talking about 2 individuals, not
yeah, they have only 2 employees that do this work.
Hundreds of people that have to get licensed for this.
Yep, and they only have to take the test 1 time. And that's it.
Okay. Is there any additional discussion on this application? Can I get a motion in regard to the application?
This is Donna. I'll move to reject the application.
Can I get a second?
For Gold Forensics.
I'll second it. It's Emily.
Okay. Got a motion to reject. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay.
I think when we inform them of this decision, we'll lay out for them what their options are clearly. Very clear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right, let me go back to the agenda here. Let's see. All right, I think we are done on this front. Does anybody have any questions about the provisions of the de minimis casework license or how it works? If anyone is doing interpretive work, regardless of whether they're in state or out state now, and that's typically the person who's signing the report, doing the forensic analysis, without the supervision of anyone else, they have to have a full license now, just like anybody else in Texas. The people that are getting what was essentially the blanket license and having to complete just the minimum professional responsibility training that we offer and certifying that they completed that are the non-interpretive employees. And there, in the toxicology field in particular, there are hundreds of these employees at NMS, right, Elise, that really aren't performing the analysis at all. And so they're licensed under this provision. And
right, we have a distinction between the interpreting scientists and the non-interpreting scientists. And the interpreting ones do get licensed, take the test.
Yep. I think that's it on there, unless anybody else has any more questions. The next one, I'm not sure what kind of update we have here yet, right, Lynn? Because
so we
haven't had
really focused on getting the mandatory professional responsibility and Michael Martin training up and available for folks, which I think people are taking it. I don't know if any of you have taken it. If so, you're probably tired of listening to my voice and Robert's. So we have got to get on this number 10 after this meeting. So Aaron, perhaps we can set up a call for this upcoming week to talk about how to proceed on that.
Sure.
What we want to do is start evolving that exam and replacing training videos that that were previously recorded and things like that. Has anyone taken the Michael Martin and professional responsibility training?
I took it last week and it's great.
Good. I'm glad. that
It's really good. You should make management. I mean, everybody needs to watch it.
Yeah, is there a way for that to be, and I don't know in top class, but can people who aren't licensed take that and see that?
Yeah, they just have to make a top class account, go on and add it. They'll go to the catalog and search for it. And
okay. Yeah, I'll let them know then, because I thought it was really good.
Good. I'm glad it's helpful. We tried to use for actual forensic science examples instead of, like, a lot of the case law is about police behavior and activity and what needs to be disclosed and what doesn't. So Robert really searched for forensic science, the examples, and the state of Massachusetts, my home state, has ample opportunity for citing things. It's like, wow. Do you guys know that? So, you know, we talked about on the video, the Sonia Farrick example. That lab was in the basement of a lecture hall at my undergrad university. And when I was like, how is
so
there
crazy
a lab in the basement of that ratty old horrible building? I just, it was like, when
while you were there, I'm sure too, at that time.
It's just insane. But anyway, we don't have any of those examples, thankfully. And I think what we're trying to do is sort of contrast the Texas approach and sort of embracing transparency with some of these other examples, which are like, you know, so that was, I hope people like it, and we'll try to, I'm trying to think if there's a less cumbersome way to make it available to
We
people.
may be able to ask them to put it in a zip file for us. It's just so large that moving it around is hard because of all the graphics associated with it. So like if we post it on our website, it would probably take up a ton of space.
But you guys just want management to go through it, like just to watch the whole thing and yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I can see some of our managers wanting their staff to watch it, even the non-licensed ones to watch it, so.
Okay, like
Would there be a way to like put it on a share file to be able to pull it down, or instead of just hosting it constantly, rather than, you know, like zipping it and emailing it, or
I wonder if we could stick it in a Dropbox or something that people.
I'm not sure, but I can ask those. I bet you the Sam Houston people have a way to get it to us portably. Right now it's in a file called SCORM, which I've never even worked with or heard of, but it's basically a file that goes into a learning management software and makes it trigger all those things it triggers. And so if she was to put it in a different file format, I'm not sure how the quiz and the buttons and all the triggers are going to work. Because right now they're talking to the top class system, and this is what the way my feeble mind understands it all, at least. But I know
with people signing up. Sorry, is there some issue with people signing up for top class and just
I don't have a problem with people. I think people have already been doing that and accessing, they're doing it to access the other Brady materials and things like that that we have on there. And we can't really control that. We could try to put up a wall to only allow people that want to be licensed to go on there, but then we'd be preventing managers from accessing all of our exam materials and everything like that. So I don't
Right.
see an issue with having them in anybody in top class. Do you, Lynn?
I don't, I guess the only question from Rodney's perspective is whether that, because he monitors all the people who started things and then not.
No, that is totally separate than someone logging. So if someone applies for a license, they'll be enrolled essentially in a license and starting an application there. If they just create an account and add something into their bucket or their catalog or whatever, they'll just take that course. We will have a record that they completed it and they'll have a profile and all that, but it'll be limited to that. So if we were to query everyone that's a forensic analyst, they would not come up on that query because they wouldn't be in the forensic analyst license.
All right, well then I think people should just go on there and take it. Just create an account and
I know it's a pain to go on there, but it executes so beautifully when you're on there. So
Lee, do you want to just send Elise and Peter Stout a note that says, we've received the following feedback. If management or people who don't need to be licensed would like to view it, create an account in top class. You can do that with the following information.
yeah, absolutely. I'll just type something up. We sent you guys instructions on how to get employees to log in, I believe. So I'll just follow up on that.
Okay, that'd be good. And I imagine there are some lawyers who would want to watch it. Like I'd like Callie and Bill to watch it because in there all their free time, but just to give us feedback on how they think it looks. And
That's what I was about to say. I know I've missed a lot, but I would certainly like to view it.
I can send you instructions, Kelly, on how to get
Okay,
in.
great, because I don't
And
even
Bill.
know what top classes, so
please.
that's where my feeble mind is at.
I'd like to send it. Can I share it with folks or not?
Yeah, so anybody can sign up for an account. What would be cool though is if like TDCA or TDCLA would maybe offer it somehow through their portals.
Okay.
so why don't we
Maybe-
have, if you guys wouldn't mind, would you watch it first
Of course.
and tell us what you think, and then we can have a conversation about whether you think it has utility beyond this group. So the way it's set up is Robert does the first half, which is focused on Brady and Morton. And then I do the second half, which is focused on the Code of Professional Responsibility for Analysts and Management. And then there's a quiz. Also quiz questions. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And I think we should send it to Don Boswell at UNT, and I think we should send it to Aquila at HFSC and any other lawyers who are closely connected with the labs.
Dawn's on the TACLID email.
So if you all have other lawyers in your immediate circle that you'd like to look at it, let us know too.
Thank you.
Sure.
I can obviously easily share it with Bill, Lynn.
Oh, yeah, it'd be good if Worski watched it too. Okay. And I feel like all labs should have a lawyer they can go to with their questions. That should be.
That's us, Lynn. That's me and you. And Robert now too. Sorry, Robert.
I guess that's true, but I feel like you should also have your own lawyer too. But some labs are moving in that direction. Oh, and we should also send it to MJ at NMS.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll get it to her.
Okay, cool. Next.
Voluntary licensure for unaccredited disciplines. Do you and Robert want to take this away? Because we have some draft
So if you pull up
requirements.
the Word bucket again, Lee, please. We have been working with a subcommittee that is in charge of crime scene reconstruction in particular. And that committee has judges, well, a judge, Judge Hervey from the Court of Criminal Appeals, prosecutors, defense lawyers, Texas Rangers, law enforcement, and people who specialize in bloodstain pattern analysis, in particular from both in Texas and outside of Texas. So we have like Kenny Martin from the OSAC, who's up in Massachusetts. We have lots of diversity in the group. And we have put together the beginning of a structure for a voluntary license. So Lee, do you want to go down past the beginning part here? So we talk about the program objective, which is trying to make sure, so recognizing that accreditation, ISO accreditation, as we have in our testing laboratories, is a much more challenging road for law enforcement agencies, especially smaller agencies that are not either in urban areas or where places where resources are ample. It's really hard for small outfits in rural areas of Texas to have the ability to get accredited under ANAB or A2LA's ISO standards. It is possible, and some have done it. Montgomery County has, I believe Harris County has. HFSC has an accredited crime scene unit, but by and large, the programs that are out there are not accredited. And so recognizing, however, that there is tremendous diversity in terms of the quality of what's being done at the crime scenes, and not only what's being done on the front lines in terms of evidence collection, but also for reconstruction. What are people saying about the photographs they're looking at from the scene? Do people understand the limits of what can be said? Do they observe and respect those limits? There's massive, massive diversity. We saw, for example, very recently, a situation where a very seasoned crime scene reconstructionist, someone who trains on this all around the state, had a DNA report from DPS, a capital murder, and reached conclusions about how things happened during the course of the crime, incorporating DPS's report, which was a star mix report containing likelihood ratios, in a way that made it abundantly clear that that person had no understanding of what that DNA report was actually saying. And I'm not just talking about subtle things like presenting the prosecutor's fallacy in the way the language was worded. I'm talking about, you know, you've got a pillowcase that's got a blood stain on it. That evidence is sent to the crime lab. The crime lab comes back and says that they believe the mixture is at least 3 individuals. And the crime scene reconstructionist concludes that that means that 3 individuals bled. The victim, the suspect, and an unknown contributor, because they're reading the hypothesis as set forth in a likelihood ratio and completely misunderstanding what that hypothesis says or what it's meant to indicate. So we all know, right, that there could be apparent blood on an evidentiary sample, and that does not mean that the lab can say which cells the evidentiary samples or the profiles represent. So we have some real work to do in this area. And so the commission agreed to create this license, which at least initially will be voluntary, but our hope is that it's robust enough and valuable enough to where people will really want to take it. So scrolling down, we had created some definitions of crime scene reconstruction and contrast that with crime scene processing or investigation. So it really is the application of science or the scientific method to evaluate information at the scene. It's beyond collection. So here's the program outline, which is really the focus here. And the group, the advisory group, agreed that there needs to be competency demonstrated in certain themes. So the scientific method, experimental design, and peer review, what are those things? What is reliability, reproducibility? What do those things mean? Cognitive bias and how it impacts interpretation. Uncertainty, uncertainty of measurement, because everything is an element of measurement. And then, what is validation? The difference between developmental validation and internal validation. Statistical concepts and probability, claims of individualization and historical problems with that. So, this hair originated from the defendant to the exclusion of all others, that sort of language that we don't embrace anymore. Discussions about what observations were made in certain reports that have been released by the federal government. And then other key concepts that I think are pretty simple to understand: evidence handling and processing, legal basics around the admissibility of forensic analysis. And then we talked about competency in certain discipline-specific areas. So if somebody is going to have blood stain pattern analysis as an area of competency in their license, they need to have taken certain 40-hour advanced courses, fluid dynamics, physics, statistics. These are all things that we believe they are going to need to demonstrate. And since they're not in an accredited lab necessarily, like typically some of the things that we rely on for the labs to check their own analyst competency or to check their own analyst education won't be present here. And so that's why we need to come up with these things. And then on top of that, we're going to ask each applicant to demonstrate certain things about the environment in which they are operating. So that's when we refer to quality system elements, that's what we mean. So they need to be able to show us that whether they're a sole practitioner or operating as part of a department, they have certain baseline protections, such as a written SOP, including records and documentation requirements, a description of the scientific limitations of analysis, a method for validating the SOP and documenting that, procedure for tech and admin review, a process for identifying errors, performing root cause, legal disclosure for purposes of compliance with Michael Morton and related law, competency testing, a training plan that's written, annual proficiency testing, and periodic courtroom testimony evaluation. And then they'll have the same CFE as everybody else. But they will have to demonstrate that their quality elements were maintained. So this is a way, understanding that the commission is not mandating accreditation for these disciplines, because we've been around Robin Hood's Barn on this subject 50 million times. And it just, the pushback we got was so strong, primarily from the Rangers. But that's not for them. They were fine with getting accredited, but more for those practitioners in more rural parts of the state who may be able to do an individual credential, but would be unable to get that ISO accreditation through ANAB or A2LA. So this is what we're looking at for crime scene reconstruction, which is far more actually than what we have in our other disciplines. But our other disciplines have a lot more already embedded in the structure of accreditation primarily. The laboratories take care of a lot of the things that are in this list. So in order to recognize that, that's why this list looks the way it does. Does that make sense? Do people have questions about this or comments, feedback? Because I'd really love to hear what people think.
I have a question. Is this for, and I may have just missed this earlier, is this for those departments or agencies that are already not accredited? Because I know there are a few that do voluntary accreditation. Of course, they have most of this already, if not all of it. So if there is a discipline like crime scene, or even taking this further, because I like a lot of this for latents, even taking it further to that, if they're already accredited, is this kind of like a separation of that, or will they then be held to this as well? Which I don't see as a problem. I'm just curious how it's written.
So I should mention that if the laboratory is accredited to ISO standards, then they will not have to satisfy the quality elements, because that will already be part of their accreditation status.
Okay, so they won't have to, yeah, and that makes complete sense. I just want to make sure that I was.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's, so the quality elements are only in when the department that the individual is a part of does not have accreditation status.
But Lynn, does it have to be accreditation status for crime scene response? Because does it have to be on their scope for crime scenes?
Yes.
Okay.
So a lot of them are not going to be 17025. They'll be 17. I'm trying to remember what's the number.
17020.
Oh, 20. Right. Although the one, so, but I don't know, HFSC might be 17025 with the crime scene designation just because they're 17025 for so many other things.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, for the ones that are standalone. So like Montgomery County only has firearms and crime scene. And so they're going to be 17020 there, I think.
I just was part of an assessment that ended yesterday for a lab in Minnesota, I believe. And there's a couple others in Texas that I've done that they're 17020 and they have crime scene and latents only or something like that. So I think there are a good handful of them at least.
Well, that's great. I mean, I'm sort of shocked to hear that, but that's really good news. And that, so for them, Lee, if you scroll up in this outline a little bit, so they will not have to satisfy quality system elements because we will check that box by their 17020 status. And then if you keep going up, Lee, they would still though need to do competency and discipline specific areas because that's an individual thing, and competency in the overarching themes.
I think those are also, other than like cognitive bias, in the overarching themes, the competency and discipline specific areas is a big part of 17020 as well. So if they're meeting that, if they are accredited in 17020, I think they're meeting that one, right? Am I right in that?
Well, I would like to see where these things are covered under 17020.
Oh,
I mean, not right now.
Criteria or?
Yeah, not right this moment, but I would want to understand how these things are addressed through accreditation under 17020, because I'm not sure they're even that well addressed, frankly, under 17025. So I would want to see how that works.
How was you guys may have talked about this, I've just been out of the loop. How does one demonstrate all this as an individual? Is there a test that's going to be developed?
Modules, asynchronous modules, and exam.
Similar to
And
what
a
we
training
give.
plan.
I'm sorry, Deborah.
I'm sorry. I was just saying, and their training program. So 17020, the requirements are almost similar, or almost actually, if not identical, to 17025 when it comes to the competency requirements. And then if we dig further, like say it's, for example, for ANAB, and I'm not 100% what it is for H or any other inspection body, ANAB, they do have like a list of requirements that kind of is further dug in their accreditation requirements that lists out some more detailed things that they would like to see during competency. And then competency is, as anyone has done an assessment, the competency, training records, things like that are observed, and they have to have testing involved. And then they have to, the newest requirement is that they have to have some sort of testing. There has to be performance criteria listed. So not just pass fail, but what constitutes pass fail, what constitutes actually achieving competency. And that's just as far as like ANAB and accreditation on that side. I can't speak for HLA or any others, but
it's not in the actual ISO 17025. It's in the supplemental requirements.
Right.
From
I mean,
ANAB.
I looked at the supplementals before, and I guess I would, before we would waive this for those who are accredited to 17020, I would want to see how these things are addressed. And that could raise the question, well, if it's good enough for a DNA analyst, then why isn't it okay for Friction Ridge people? And I just think we're going to have to work through that question.
Yeah, I mean, if you have firearms labs right now that are under 020, and theoretically they should be having to meet all of these things under their accredited laboratory. So I don't know. The only real difference that I remember between 25 and 020 is validation of methods, because I mean, and really honestly, that's why firearms falls under that, is because there's really not a method to validate. So
there is a method validation section in there now.
Oh, there is?
They updated them recently. So there is now. There isn't necessarily any of the terminology on like calibration stuff.
Okay.
There's some, but it's not to the extent on calibration that it is in 025.
Okay.
Well, we can talk through what should be waived in this when there is accreditation present, whether under 025 or 020. Because if it's being covered, it's being covered, and that's good.
Makes sense.
Lynn, can I ask a separate question about this? And I don't know that it needs to be answered right now, but I understand that licensure and the commission's overview of professional conduct, professional negligence is two somewhat related but two separate things. These disciplines don't fall under the purview of the commission for those types of investigation, but y'all can do for educational purposes or whatever. Could there be a way to tie this in that by becoming licensed, that individual would be subject to professional conduct, professional negligence complaints, rather than just being dismissed outright?
Fantastic question.
I think it's a great idea.
I think, so I need to do a little bit of statutory analysis to give you a definitive answer, Erin, but what the law says is the commission by rule may establish voluntary licensing programs for forensic disciplines that are not subject to accreditation under this article. And then when it talks about license revocation, it says, on a determination by the commission that a license holder has committed professional misconduct under this article or violated this article or a rule or order of the commission under this article, the commission may revoke or suspend the license, refuse to renew, et cetera, et cetera. So because that language references the license holder and not forensic analyst, I think once you submit yourself to this, you also are submitting yourself to having your license status disciplined. Now, the question, because the disciplinary, because the conduct that you can be disciplined for includes a violation of the Code of Professional Responsibility, and not just forensic analysis, I think once you submit yourself to being licensed, you also submit yourself to having your license taken away. Now, I do think Lee and Robert, can you put on your list, please?
Yeah.
That we need to review all statutory language and all rule language to make sure that the code in particular covers both those who are licensed because they have to be, because they're forensic analysts, and those who are submitting to a voluntary program.
I'll check and look, but just offhand, I can tell you that our investigative jurisdiction would not cover that for certain disciplines. While we may be able to cover it under the Code of Professional Responsibility, like you said, take action that way, but under our investigative authority, it's limited to forensic analysis. So if a discipline, for example, is exempt from the definition of forensic analysis outright, such as latent prints, I'm not sure we can pursue an investigation for professional misconduct or negligence against that person.
We definitely
So,
can. We wouldn't. So we wouldn't be able to conclude that the analyst committed professional misconduct or negligence if they were Friction Ridge, unless Friction Ridge was subject to accreditation. However, I do think that we can make sure that our rules say that the code applies to anyone who is a licensed period, whether because they chose to be or because they had to be. So that's really where I think the hook would be. And what I think would happen though is that we would have to have a complaint process for license holders who are voluntary license holders. We need to talk about that. And we need to talk about whether that requires a statute change or not.
Yeah, that's a really interesting issue. Such a good point, Erin. I want to look at all of our rules and see how that would apply.
Because we didn't write them with that in mind, because we were just, you know, really trying to get through the ones that, the 1,300 that we first started with. But I do, I mean, it frankly doesn't make much sense to me to create a license if there's no potential for
take any action on it.
Right. And I mean, obviously we want this to promote people to improve. We want this not to be punitive. We want to encourage people to increase their standards. But by getting licensed, that adds credentials to them. They can market themselves better. So there can't be just positives to it. There has to be, you know, it's not just the carrot, it has to have the stick.
Yeah. Accountability.
Right. So if somebody violates the code, then, and we even need to relook at the code to make sure that that what's in there is not so focused on forensic
analysis.
And that it's inclusive enough to include any type of interpretation of evidence that can impact the outcome in a criminal case. So yeah, that's a great point. And I'm really glad you raised it. And I'm glad you raised it now because it will give us a chance to make changes to the language before we end up like, oh, so really mess this thing up and the Rangers brought it to our attention but we can't do anything, you know, like that's because the law is not clear or the language is too limited. So thank you for raising that.
No problem.
Thank you, Chairman.
Look at that. You earned your first day.
I'm done. I'm out.
First day you stumped your lawyers.
Okay, do you want to go back to the,
Yeah. Is it not showing anymore?
I see people, I see the Brady Bunch screen, but I don't see the agenda.
Okay. Oh, you want the agenda? Is that where we're going to?
Yeah.
Oh, I have a question about
Did you have another question, Elise?
the voluntary license, the crime scene.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when you have the competency in discipline specific areas,
Right.
and you only have bloodstain pattern analysis,
Right.
are you intending to expand that to firearms reconstruction and latent print specific?
I thought we had something in there about shooting scene reconstruction. Lee, can you scroll down a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
No, physics and statistics and fluid dynamics, but I don't see shooting scene.
So they're gonna get the people in the group that that do this for a living are gonna get back to us with other what we're calling sub-disciplines in addition to BPA, because not everybody's gonna do, there was a whole discussion at the meeting about whether some people do just shooting reconstruction and they don't touch BPA, and other people just do BPA and they don't touch scene, the shooting stuff. And the consensus was that in Texas, yes, people just do one or just do the other. And so we really need to have designations for both. And then they were going to think about whether there's anything else that would be like a sort of a sub-discipline of scene reconstruction. But those were the two main ones. Now, we also have to be clear about when you're crossing over the line into you need to be a licensed firearms analyst when we're talking about this too. So that's,
as long as somebody has it on their radar, that's fine.
yes. So those were the two main ones, bloodstain pattern and the shooting trajectory analysis. But I don't know, those of you who are closer to this, like Deborah and Donna, are there other sub-disciplines off the top of your heads that you can think of?
I think it depends on how you want to break it down, because not every discipline, but most disciplines have like their like latent prints, for example. I know I'm kind of focused on that. There's a reason. Latent prints has not just comparison, they also have processing. They also have databasing, APHIS, kind of like DNA does with CODIS, and firearms does with NIBIN, or firearms does with, not everybody does serial number restoration, or not everyone does distance determination. So you kind of have that same thing broken down in like latent prints. And then I can't speak so much for digital. I don't know a whole lot about digital evidence, but I know that's like on the radar for the future as well. So I think it depends on like how far you're wanting to kind of break it down. Yeah, way in the future.
Right,
like how far you're wanting to define it.
There's the Pharaoh, which I don't know a whole lot about, and like I know we're playing right now with a drone and like being able to video a scene, and then you can do measurements from those. So like how deep in the weeds do you want to get with reconstruction type stuff?
Yeah, well, we will definitely talk about that as we move, but I think the two that were primarily brought up were shooting trajectory, if I'm saying that right, and BPA. But you will see updated versions of this as it gets further developed. Okay. And on digital, so once this gets implemented, then it'll be either Friction Ridge or digital. I don't know how we're going to determine which one. Honestly, Friction Ridge feels daunting to a point of almost paralysis, but I think it's really important, probably more important than any of the rest. And digital, they've been pushing us to do this for a long time. So I mean, in fairness, so is the Friction Ridge community in Texas. Like the people who are really engaged want this credential. So in some respects, I feel like we've taken on the trickiest one first in a way with crime scene reconstruction, but trickiest from the perspective of content and what is it? Whereas Friction Ridge and digital seem a little bit better defined in my mind. So it's just that Friction Ridge has so many practitioners in Texas that we don't even know how many there are. We don't know how many departments do the work. This survey has been attempted. The survey itself can't even get accurate information back. And this is multiple attempts at the federal level of trying to figure out the answer to the question simply of how many Friction Ridge practitioners are there in this state. So anyway, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think like looking at the framework that's been done here for crime scene, I think this will go a long way because I see a lot of this that would be applicable to latent prints and even to any other disciplines, most likely to digital as well, but definitely to latent prints. So I think, yeah, it is definitely daunting on that aspect that you're discussing. But I think with this, the legwork is almost done because this could be very similarly attributed to latent prints as well. And same thing with, I've always been of the idea, for what it's worth, that firearms being a pattern type discipline is very similar to Friction Ridge. So I feel like we could even steal a little bit of that in some ways to help that process along because there are a lot of similarities. So on that end, I feel like this is great. This is almost, I'm not gonna say the work's done for us, but I think that's great. So I think coming up, I'd love to focus on coming up with a way to, like you said, address the daunting issue in latent prints of figuring out who's just thrown in the ID unit because they weren't doing something else, which I've experienced personally, who officers who are taken off the streets for some reason and, oh, now you're going to go do prints for the day or something like that, which I've seen, which is terrible, which we need to stop that practice. But how do we do that, right? So yeah, getting that information is important.
And I think, our firearms analysts are already on the hook. They came in the first group. And to be very frank about that was the discipline we were most concerned about in terms of whether they would be able to, whether they would even be willing to participate, frankly. And the truth is, it's been fine. It's been fine. By and large, they all got licensed.
They all passed the test.
They figured it out. And here we are. And there's always like one or two here or there that's like, I'm out of here. I'm done. I'm not, but we had one in toxicology. So
yeah,
it's
they're old fogies that, started at the very beginning, not the new folks that are in there that want to be in front.
That's that. So
yeah.
I mean, granted, there are a lot of people who just simply don't like change. And I know we have a lot of latent print folks who are the same way. And I think you mentioned, or someone mentioned it earlier in the meeting, that latent print folks tend to latch on to things. And I think that is agreed, but we're all going through changes now anyway. So yeah, I think hopefully, I'm hoping and get through this process and sell it. And if it's buy-in, that helps.
Once the lawyers start asking the question on the stand, like once Callie puts out there, hey, this thing is here, and Bill puts that out there, and other lawyers do, and people start asking the question, that's what drives a lot of it. Like, hey, are you licensed by the Texas Forensic Science Commission? It's, no. Oh, okay. That's so. Not that no means you're not going to be able to testify, but that dynamic drives things, I think. Okay, anything else on the voluntary license, or should we move ahead, Lee?
I think that's it.
Okay. All right, so down below Roman 12, Lee.
On 11, it said to vote for the proposed comments. Do we need to do that now?
Do we need to vote on the draft document, Lynn? I wasn't sure there, I think.
Think so, because it's not,
Maybe wait till we have some rules.
we have the rules, then you have to vote on it.
Okay.
But we wanted to get your feedback before we just draft the rule.
We don't have it. I'm sorry, Lynn, go
I was
ahead.
just gonna say, in terms of timing for this, we are not gonna roll it out before the end of the year because it will kill Rodney. Like, I think it would literally be the end of him. He would quit. And so we don't want that to happen. So we're gonna wait, and we'll start this once we get our current folks through their renewal.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
The next
If I can-
item here, go ahead, Deborah.
I'm so sorry. I was just
No,
going to throw in, oh, my connection's not working very well. Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, okay, good. I just wanted to throw in, I don't do a whole lot when it comes to the holidays, so I'll be around if any help is needed on that front. I'm pitching in, just throwing that out there because I know that December is going to be a lot.
Yeah, we'll definitely
Thank
reach
you.
out for sure. Thank you.
Anything else on that? On item 12 here, we don't have any waiver applications. For the new members, if you all recall, part of our rules has an exemption for support personnel that aren't performing any laboratory functions that would qualify as forensic analysis. And this is a very limited subset of people maybe that are washing dishes or something like that. They can apply for this waiver from the licensing requirements. And we've actually never granted any of these. We don't have any waiver apps before us now, but we may in the future. So on 13 here, criminal history results, we don't have anything to review here. We had one candidate that came back with one DUI. And if you all, well, most of you haven't seen, we have a guidance document for how we evaluate these. And what we'd have to do is demonstrate that whatever the criminal act that the person did, regardless of the timing of it, if it was in 1980 or whatever, that it relates to their duties as a forensic analyst. And it's hard to argue that any criminal act doesn't in some way relate to the duties, but sometimes it's more obvious than in other cases. But we have a list of certain crimes that absolutely we consider them to relate to the duties of a forensic analyst. And in the case of a DUI, a single DUI, we don't consider that to be something that's going to impact your duties. But in the case of multiple DUIs, regardless of whether they happened over a long period of time, this board would have to consider whether they would deny the person's license. And there may be a number of factors when it happened, their age. We would have to go through that and make that decision together. But in this case, we don't have to. We had one that came up with one DUI, and so staff moved forward with their license. Anybody have any questions on that and how we review those? Okay. Technical reviewer license application. This provision is not for someone in a laboratory who can otherwise be licensed that strictly does tech review, because I know there are a lot of people in your laboratories that maybe strictly do tech review, but they're otherwise eligible for the license. This would be a rare case in which someone who is not eligible for the license, there's no one else to tech review the work. And so someone from out of state who can't get the license, they don't work for an accredited lab, wants to do the tech review. This license would only apply in that scenario. So we get very few of these as well. And we don't have any before us today. Anybody have any questions?
I mean, it's basically like, like one example was fire debris analysis at one of our labs. They needed a tech reviewer. There weren't very many options, and they hired somebody from Florida to do it. And that would be an example.
Yep.
I can think of examples when we do start including latent prints, if and when. I know this won't necessarily be a requirement, but latent prints is one of those that seeks consultants all the time. And they could be within Texas, So that just to do reviews.
I think we'll be okay because the license is voluntary at this point. If it were mandatory, it would be different. But because it's voluntary, you can just volunteer to not do it as a tech reviewer or otherwise.
On the temporary license applications, we don't have any here. And that's just, these are one criminal case at a time, one-offs, special case scenarios like we talked about when we were talking about the Pure Gold forensic app. We don't have any outstanding applications here, and I've never granted a temporary license, and the reason for that is because we have that blanket program that laboratories opt to do. It's more cost effective to pursue licensure that way rather than on a case-by-case basis. On 16 here, we permit students to take the exam a 4th time. They typically get 3 tries, but they have to ask us for permission for that 4th try and demonstrate, you know, some reason why they failed it 3 times and ask us whether we approve. We don't have any 4th exam requests at this time. We talked about 17. Was there anything else on that, Lynn? I think we covered that. 18, OSAC. Do you want to talk about that?
Just that we're drafting a strategic plan for OSAC initiatives that is going to hopefully help with implementation. And Peter Stout and I are still talking about what that's going to look like. But as soon as I have it, I will distribute it to everybody. I'm going to be working on it this afternoon. But the idea being that, you know, we really want to, as more standards start hitting the registry, we want to evaluate them and encourage implementation while acknowledging places where labs may need more time or may have challenges or things like that. Or may need more instrumentation and there's just not enough money in the budget, or, you know, things like that, realities of OSAC implementation. We're trying to bridge the standards themselves and what's happening on the ground and helping labs perform a gap analysis. I'd really like to hire a project manager to help with this process. And I was talking to Mark Stolero about it, and he thinks that NIST may have money to help support the funding of that. So like maybe we could split the cost, which would be helpful. So we're talking through all sorts of things, but I can't keep up with all the OSAC standards on my own, and Peter Stout can't keep up with them all, and neither can Elise. So we have got to find somebody whose job it is to help labs understand what's coming out through training, right? Assess whether it's something they can do and what would need to be done in order to execute. And then we need to have a place on our website where the whole legal community can go and say, okay, well, DPS has adopted the following 10 standards. They're in the process of adopting the following 3, and these ones don't apply to them, or they don't do this type of analysis, so they haven't adopted this one, or whatever. Like some place for labs to publish what they're doing in this area. The commission has been historically very reluctant to mandate implementation, but I don't know that that will last forever. But we have to get the voluntary adoption going, and we have to start doing these gap analyses so we can understand how these documents impact our labs. With the intent, of course, of embracing them to the extent we can. Does that make sense? Anybody have questions? I mean, it's really exciting, also daunting. Sort of my life in general is described by those 2 words. So yeah, we'll update you on that outline.
Lynn, when you're talking about a gap analysis, are you talking about the industry in general, or are you talking about specific laboratories?
I think in order to understand where the Texas, so let's say we look at these drugs in Texas as a whole. In order to know where the industry stands, we have to ask each lab to tell us, you know, look, I look at this standard and it's a no-brainer and we do it already, no big deal. Or I look at this standard and I wonder, how am I supposed to even do that? Like, with what equipment or with what, you know what I'm saying? So I think we have to, in order to get to the answer of where is the industry in Texas, we're going to need to ask each lab to tell us, when you look at this standard, what do you see? What are your barriers to implementation? So that's why I was hoping to have a project manager who could facilitate those conversations, both at the publicly funded labs and at the private labs.
Is there something, and maybe this is already done, I really don't know, but I don't even get it in my lab, is when there's a new standard for public comment, even before it's implemented, labs need to be reviewing them and making comments to make sure that the standard that comes out is something that can be met. Hopefully things will get changed. So is there a way to like start with that and just, as a new standard comes out for public comment, like I get the newsletters, so I get notified when there's something new, but probably not everybody is quite on top of that. So just reminding lab directors to pass it on to their managers that you need to review this and make comment before this becomes something that you have to adopt.
Yeah, I mean, we've done those generalized reminders like, hey, everybody, don't forget, you know, or we have these debates at the commission where a commissioner will say that DNA standard is whatever. And then other commissioners will say, well, why didn't you comment during the public comment period? So this is a like recording that plays on a reloop at our commission meetings. But the reality is that unless somebody says to you, Donna, there's a firearm standard that's really important that's coming down the tracks, set aside what you're doing and look at it. It's really hard. It's a big ask for the whole community to be on top of this stuff all the time, unless you've been designated as part of your job to do that. And so
it is my job.
My idea though is to have a project manager to help with that process. So the person would be in charge both of like, heads up, everybody in Texas, here's the seized drug stuff, here's the firearm stuff, here's the, you know, and then to say, here are the standards already on the registry. Help us understand where you are in terms of implementation. Because, I mean, like Bruce Bedoli, who's on our commission, feels pretty strongly that some of these standards can go forward, but there should be commentary, like commission commentary attached that say, for example, this standard's okay, but it's really no different than anything the SWIG has ever said. And here are some other things that need to be made clear about, like, we would have amplified this section by saying it means at a minimum the following. Or conversely, in the opposite direction, here's this new toxicology standard. I don't know what lab you think is going to be able to do this, but it's not a lab that currently exists in the vast majority of local and state jurisdictions. You know what I'm saying? Like we have to, that's the idea, is that there be standards released with commission comments attached. Not in all cases, some of them are easy breezy, but in some cases. But in order to be able to do that effectively, I really need somebody dedicated to that task. And that's why we're going to try to co-fund that with NIST for this one state. And I think one of the reasons why they're going to want to do that with Texas is because there is oversight authority in the form of our commission, and most other states do not have that. So, Yeah, I mean, our hope is to help the labs think about barriers and then also help them advocate like, hey, we want to be able to comply with this standard, but we can't because we've been asking for this same instrument for the last decade and you people are so cheap that you won't give it to us or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, please, we really need it. We're not making it up. Here's the standard. We're not meeting it. Come on, guys, you know? So our hope is that it'll help for those conversations as well. Does that make sense? Okay. Anything else on OSAC? I don't know that we have anything from TACLID in particular. When are they meeting again? Does anyone know the answer to that?
It'll be before the Q4 meeting of the Forensic Science Commission.
January or April?
This is fourth quarter of the calendar year.
This is, yeah, I was gonna say this
It'll
is
be January. Mm-hmm.
January. Okay, so the day before the January meeting. Okay.
which is
Oh,
January
well,
January 29th is our next meeting date.
It'll probably be the 27th if the licensing
Committee, yeah.
committee is meeting on the day before.
All right. And
Unless
that's,
we can schedule morning and afternoon. I don't know.
yeah,
I
so
can work with you on that if you want to do it that way, Elise.
Please.
I think we'll probably still be virtual at that time.
We
So
definitely will, but we can coordinate our timing and all that.
it's nice to have, it's nice. I feel like the labs can participate a little more easily in a way. It's almost better. So,
Yeah.
okay. What else we got? I guess that's it.
No,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Elise. Sorry.
I do have an update from Barry on the statistics class. He said that they are making some revisions to the curriculum and it should be ready in Q1.
Okay, super. And you guys will send that to us when the link is ready.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay.
Thank you.
And our next meeting will be the day before.
So January 28th. Let me just be sure. I always have to look at the calendar.
And unless there's an emergency of some type between now and then, and we'll let you know, and we would have to meet, but hopefully not.
January 28th.
And it'll be the same time, 9 o'clock.
Unless anybody has a preference change now that we have a new group of people. Does anybody have time preferences? Because we can be flexible now that we're virtual anyway.
We used to do 10 o'clock to allow people to drive in, but now that nobody has to drive, it feels like 9 is doable. I know it's tough for you, Bill, because court's usually in the morning, but now that's all who knows what. So
Well, I just got screamed at by a judge because I was doing multiple Zooms and small counties. Seems like the smaller the jurisdiction, the more important and capriciously they wield their power. So, but I can make it work.
okay.
Let us know if you change your mind or anything comes up and you have like an important trial, we can work around it.
And if you need us to move it to the afternoon, we can figure that out, Bill. I don't want to be constantly, I think, well, I don't know, probably the same is true for Callie. I don't know how often you have to make court appearances, but we can.
I do not anymore, so I'm pretty flexible as well.
Okay, just let us know.
Got it.
Okay, all right, thank you all. Aaron, you can take a motion to dismiss unless folks have something else they want to say. I don't think we have public comment, actually. Do we? Is there any public comment?
No, I don't have any requests and I don't see anyone online.
I saw at one point somebody that jumped on with initials RL, but they're not here now. So,
RL.
okay. Are there any other anything else for discussion?
Is there anyone commission expiring soon that we need to?
We have commissioner, we have seats that have expired in September. There's 4 of them. And so we're waiting on the governor to appoint those seats.
Okay.
And there's often a delay, and I imagine there's going to be even more of a delay now that they're just focused on COVID. And we do have one commissioner, unfortunately. We should have announced this too, that Pat Johnson unfortunately resigned because he's moving on to farming. Him and his wife and family have a big farm, and he's been doing that for a while, but now he's going to solely focus his time on that. And he's trying to separate himself from the forensic world. And so he resigned his position, and he won't be at the meeting tomorrow. So the governor's office is looking to fill that position. And then we have the 4 seats that have expired. September 1, they expired. That we're waiting on.
I mean, Pat went to retirement like 3 times. And
Yeah.
going back in. So he's finally really doing it this time.
Yeah.
I miss Pat. He's a great guy. But the governor has sought input on potential replacements, so we'll see what they do with it. And I expect we'll hear something, but the way the Constitution works is that you hold over. You're like stuck until you're told otherwise. So the commissioners who are on there they're just on there until somebody tells them they're not.
I'm pretty sure the language even says at the governor's pleasure, you serve, which is kind of archaic, but funny.
And some of those seats are just so specific in the statute that the individuals who are occupying them are not going to change, like the UNTC, stuff like that. Okay.
Is there anything else for discussion? If not, can I get a motion to adjourn?
This is Donna. I move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor?
Hey.
Aye. Opposed? All right, you guys be good.
Thank
Good to
you,
see you.
everybody. Take care.
Thank you.